Well, welcome everyone. You know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune because it's time for the RecPoker podcast. I am your host, Chris Jones, filling in for Jim Reid, who is collecting baby avocados as we speak in the main event of the WSOP. I am hoping that when I get off this episode, he has even more of those than when we started. But he was sitting about 80 to 100 big blinds deep last I checked on day 2D. So we're wishing him well, and it means you're stuck with me hosting. But I am just one of the people who make the magic happen at RecPoker. We are built and run by a group mostly volunteers. We call ourselves the RECing Crew, and one of those other RECing Crew members is with me tonight.
I am John Somsky, also known as Poker Geek MN, and I run the home games. And I am hoping that Jim Reid, our fearless leader, will be unavailable for the next week or so because he will be going deep into the main and tell us what it's like to make day 6 or day 7 or the final table.
That would be pretty amazing, wouldn't it?
That would be.
Then you start collecting more than avocados. Then you get like the lavenders. I don't know what we even call those. And then they start getting the like oversized, those chips. I don't even, those are the ones. Those are the ones that like I have always wanted to just even like hold in my hand, just have one of those like that they used to call them the mini Frisbees back in the day.
Yep.
Never been able to. And then like shuffling those, that's got to be a great feeling, right? That's just, it's just got
and playing the main event is on most poker players' bucket list, right? I know it's on mine. I have not done it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that Jim does extremely well.
This is also a pre-recorded episode, so it's a kind of a mishmash. The middle of summer, the middle of the WSOP. I had a great interview this morning due to the time zone difference with Byron Jacobs at D&B Publishing. D&B Publishing, for those of you who don't know, is the publisher of like the lot of the seminal poker books out there. And Byron has a really interesting story to tell about how he came to get into this, what kinds of things he looks for in a poker book, how he keeps track of trends in the poker world, and kind of some sidelights along the way. But I think it was a really great conversation. And we're gonna if you're listening on the podcast, you're actually going to hear that right in a few seconds. If you're watching us live on YouTube, you're going to have to wait till that audio episode comes out. But we are going to go into that interview right now and then come back and chat about a few other things. So here's my interview with Byron Jacobs of D&B Publishing. So Byron Jacobs, thank you for joining us on the RecPoker podcast. We're really happy to have you here. I'm really excited about this conversation. Take me back. Let's start with your connection to poker in general. Like how did the whole D&B thing start happening? What is your connection to poker?
Sure. Okay. First of all, thanks very much for having me on. It's a big thrill to be here, and I'm sure we'll have an interesting conversation. My initial area of expertise was chess. I was a strong chess player as a kid, and as happened with many other chess players, I sort of moved into poker. I got interested when the poker boom started, around the early 2000s, something like that. And I didn't even know how to play. I didn't know anything about the game, but I vaguely knew how to play. And also, I had a chess publishing company, but one of the guys, Dan, who was working as a marketing guy for the chess, we got on really well. And we thought there was room to start a company doing other games. So we were thinking we'd do stuff like backgammon, bridge, we did a book on blackjack, all sorts of stuff like that. We did puzzle books. Sudoku came in. We did one or two poker things, but we didn't really have any contacts. And then suddenly poker started to rule as around a money maker and stuff like that. And we thought, right, there's a good opportunity here. And I managed to develop my game. I'd started to play quite a lot. And I'd become moderately successful over a period of time. With the games playing ability, it's not too difficult to pick up the game and attain some proficiency at it. And I got in contact with like a few people. I'd been on forums and stuff like that. So we managed to sort of get some authors in the early days. And then there was a big change when I was working for a site called Poker Strategy. I was making them some material, some coaching materials, and John Little was working on the site too. And I watched some of his stuff, and I really liked it. I thought this guy explains things beautifully, really clear, really a great teacher, a great communicator of information. And so I contacted him and said, "Do you want to write a book?" And he said, "Oh, great! Actually, I've kind of already written one, and I didn't know what to do with it." So he was a big impetus to get us going because he put us in touch with a lot of other people. I mean, we subsequently did books that involved Phil Hellmuth, Mike Sexton, numerous big name players, and we would have found it very difficult to sort of worm our way in. But he kind of, he's like that, that game. They play with like Kevin Bacon in I think it's Kevin Bacon in Hollywood.
Yeah.
When you're
6 degrees of separation.
John Little's the kind of Kevin Bacon,
Yeah. He's really, he is. That is an interesting way to put it. Like Jonathan Little kind of is the Kevin Bacon of the poker world. He really, he is so well connected and so well knows so many people. So take me back even earlier then. So you already had publishing experience. That was something that was already part of your skill set. You didn't have to learn that as well as
No, I was already a publisher and had been for 15 years or so in the 90% in the chess environment. I'd done some other things, but chess was my area. I wouldn't claim I was like the John Little of chess, but I knew a lot of people because I played and I was quite well connected. So finding authors to write chess was easy for me. And obviously because I understand the game very well, the production was very easy. I didn't have the knowledge when we started poker to do it, but I picked it up quite quickly.
Well, and so this might be, for our audience, in my day job, I work at a literary arts center. We work with a lot of creative writers and people who are aspiring publishers. They work with, agents and editors at, big publishers and that kind of thing. And one of the things that I know, having sort of learned a lot about the publishing industry, is that books move at a glacial pace. Like publishing takes forever, way longer than most people think it takes. And yet you with D&B seem to be able to publish timely books on like the topics of the moment, like where we're talking about, okay, now there's some new solver strategy and you get like Michael Acevedo to write like so like I'm curious about how you've been able to do that with the fact that books move so slowly and you're still able to sort of publish these timely books.
I understand what you're saying, and I completely agree with you because as we've all got a bit older, the world seems to move much faster. And you're right, book production, there isn't really some mechanism to speed it up. It takes a while to publish a book. You've got to get it printed, you've got to ship it somewhere. It's got to get through customs. It's got to go through the web. That's ignoring all the production on the book. It's got to be edited, proofread, checked, etc. So we tend to budget for about a year to produce a book. So if you tell me you want to write a book and I say, great, we'll do a contract, we'll go ahead, we'd be looking to publish WSOP next year, something like that. So what we have to try and do is just like, not exactly anticipate a little bit, but make sure that stuff that we commission is, in our judgment, likely to be relevant and won't be superseded by the time it comes out. Now, I know that things do change very quickly, but even in the poker world, where new software comes out seemingly every 5 minutes, and things move quick, but they're not so fast that 1 year is going to be radically different from the previous year. And we try and do another thing that I focus on a lot is I try and do a variety of books. Obviously, there's everyone plays No Limit Hold'em, but 90% of people play No Limit Hold'em. And what I try to avoid doing is having the same book again and again and again, just by different authors. So we try to have like a different perspective on the game. Some are very analytic, some are much more, what would you say, much more chatty. That's not quite the right word, but it's just giving simple pieces of advice rather than burrowing deep down in a solver or something. And then we've got stuff in the middle, and some of it is more practical, some of it's theoretical, some of it's more geared towards tournaments or cash, and we don't do a huge number of books. We do like maybe 3 a year. So it's not as if we've got to find tons of new material. We can tick over, and fortunately, the books have strong sales figures, so we don't need to do. Chess is different. We get much more modest returns, so we need to do a lot of books to make it work. But the poker's, we couldn't produce 12 books a year. It'd be ridiculous. There isn't the room for that. But the ones we do, fortunately, seem to have. The poker public seems to engage with them, so we consistently get good results from in terms of revenue from our publications.
And one of the other things that I know is probably a challenge for you is that you're working in this field with experts, but not with writers. So they come to you and say, or I don't know actually what your process, whether you recruit people or they come to you and pitch, but regardless, either way, you might have a very accomplished, very, thoughtful, excellent poker player that people want to hear from, but they may have never written a book before. And walk me through how you turn a poker player into a writer. Like what is that process like?
Okay, well, what I would say is that I've obviously worked throughout my life, not just with people writing on poker, but mainly on chess, but other subjects as well. So I've got quite a good feel for how people write and how they're going to be able to put stuff together. And if people want to write a book and they've gone to the trouble of like putting some package together with like maybe a dummy chapter and an outline of the whole project, they're generally pretty good at stringing words together. I mean, we do also get approached by like people who've like been working as poker journalists, stuff like that. That happens quite often, as well as just the very strong players. But in general, they write pretty well. And if someone kind of writes, I wouldn't kind of work with someone who was really inept at writing. I think it'd be too difficult. But obviously, some people are better than others. But if someone's a little bit clumsy in the way they put stuff together, well, we edit the books. I have a couple of editors I'm who are very reliable. I know if I've got time and I'm particularly interested in the topic, I might do it myself because I've written a lot of books myself. So I'm competent at doing this sort of stuff, but we don't get anything that's so. In fact, I wouldn't commission it if I was unsure. But we don't get things that are so terrible that someone has to completely rewrite the book. They can. What players or writers in general struggle with more is structure, because they have a lot of good ideas, but they kind of throw them all down like on a what do you call it? On a board or something. They splat something there and something there and something there. And, you need to sort of step back and take a view and say, no, that needs to go in there. That needs to go in there. And, within a few hours, you can make a structure for a book and make it all make sense. So I've done this certainly a couple of times. An author has sent me something and I've liked the work, but it's been kind of, it doesn't make any sense the way the flow goes. And I kind of rejig it. And when they see it again, they say, oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Yeah, I couldn't work it out. So, yeah, I mean, like I say, most people, most of them can write, and actually the people who write well, this is quite interesting, and it's something I wouldn't have expected at all. It's got more or less nothing to do with their level of education. I mean, people who got out of education at 16 can write really well. And there's other people who've got like college degrees, university degrees, although they can sort of, in principle, create more grammatically correct sentences. Their writing is just sometimes just flat and boring and not interesting. Whereas, someone brings some infectious enthusiasm to the writing, it shines through, and it doesn't matter that it's not grammatically, technically accurate or something. But it makes you want to read it, which is more important.
Yeah, and actually, that's one of the things I really appreciate about many of your books is that there is this sort of it's not flat. There's sort of an immersive part. There's a storytelling part. There's a narrative aspect to the books that goes beyond just, okay, I had ace king and what do I do on this board? There's this like I had ace king and I was in the main event, and there's a storytelling aspect to it that sort of livens it up, which I really do appreciate. And I think that's a really important part to like draw the reader into these to the books. So So, the other thing, I'm going to get off publishing shortly. I know there's probably not where everyone wants to go, but I have one more sort of publishing question, which is, you it's an ever-changing business. We've seen sort of technology sort of move. You've now worked on audiobooks, you've worked on translations, you've turned some into sort of like complimentary video series. I'm wondering about sort of where you think the publishing, the poker publishing world is moving, and how you're sort of like adapting to all these changes around you. And so,
That's a really good question, and it's become particularly pertinent in maybe the last 10 years. I think ebooks kind of kicked in around 2012, something like that. And for a while, we were kind of all at sea because all we'd done as publishers for our lives is like produce these paper things that we would get in the bookstores and hope that people buy them. Now suddenly we were confronted by we had to get involved in ebook markets, and obviously there's a lot of video around, and Audible is really big. Unfortunately, poker does work more. It kind of surprised me. I thought people wouldn't like poker on Audible, but they sell brilliantly on Audible. People love them. They say they like drive to work when we chat to people, sometimes they say they drive to work and they have them on in their car, or they're sitting on a train and they're listening to the stuff. So yes, that was definitely a challenge, but also it kind of made life more interesting, having to find different formats to present our material, and also thinking about how we could use the books to create the material in such a way that it would work in different formats and not just in a book. And another thing is that it also makes people realize how much information is really in a book, because we've made like video versions of books and Audible. And the Audible version of like one of our books can be like 25 hours or something. Right, and there can be like 15 hours of video transfer. So there's, just like a book like this, you think, oh, I don't need that. I'll go and watch a video for 40 minutes or something. This is like, 20 videos worth or something. It's surprising how much information there still is. And it's almost like somehow coming to the stage that this isn't quite right, but somehow the books are almost like the marketing tool for everything else that we do. People still like books. They've gone through a transition, a bit like happened with vinyl with music. Like suddenly vinyl just died because everyone was getting the iPods and all that kind of stuff. And then it kind of flattened, and suddenly it's back that people want it back again. And a similar thing has happened with books. They definitely had a dip down like around 2014, 15, 16. Yep. Our sales did drop down a bit, but then people started wanting them again. So these things kind of swing around, and we've been doing fine since then. Yeah, but, we do try to make as much use as we can of these new formats as they arise.
Yeah, I think my entire career I've read an article every year about how the book is dying, the book is dead, and the book never dies. It comes back in different ways, in different forms, but I don't think that physical media is going to like go away. I think it'll iterate, and there'll be all the other options to go along with it, but I don't think it's ultimately going to go away.
One thing that people often ask me is, why are people still reading books when they can watch videos and stuff? And I have a personal, because I just love books. I wouldn't be a publisher if I didn't but I just love books in general. And I think one thing I always feel quite strongly is if you've got a book, you're forced to engage with it. You're forced to actually read it and absorb the information. If you're watching a video, I'm as guilty of this. I can kind of zone out, and I'm thinking about, 10 minutes has gone past. Oh, he got an ace, he won that. I'm not maybe engaging with it like I should, but a book, you have to, you can't suddenly be on page 210 and you haven't noticed, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it is interesting that way. I think both, I've noticed that with the audio format too, like, cause I listen to some poker podcasts, I listen to some Audible books, or I read the books, but both of those require you to concentrate, require you to think about, because the visual aspect of it, you can just sort of like get distracted, and it's interesting that way. At least for me, at least the way I learn, I find that kind of way of engaging with the material is more instructive and more like kind of seeps into where I need it when I need it. So okay, let's shift to sort of the poker world and like talk a little bit about some strategy aspects and things some books that have come out recently. Tell me, you've published now dozens of poker books. If somebody said to you, because this is a recreational poker audience, I'm a recreational player. I'm not very studied, but I'd like to get better. I'd like to take this more seriously. Do you have a go-to book or two that you've published over the years that you would point them to as like a starting point?
Yeah, we have, like I said before, we have many different kind of angles that all the books try to take a different angle. I mean, there are some that are. One that comes to mind is John Little's Secrets of Tournament Poker. It's a hardback. It's a very nice book. It's one of the very few books we've done in hardback, and that is just a complete primer. It gives you everything. Gives you the opening ranges that you should be playing, strategies on the flop, strategies on the turn, bluffing, counting cards, block. Everything. But it's not too heavy. It's not a heavyweight book. It's not a big. There's no kind of GTO in there. There's nothing that's gonna think that you want to learn some sort of elementary maths and you're suddenly in a PhD class or something. It's nice and chatty and straightforward, and you can pick it up. So there's a book like that. Now, maybe if someone's a bit more advanced and that's maybe stuff that they already know, there's the obvious one is the Michael Acevedo book, which is it's a bit of a. Yeah, I hesitate to say it's gone the publisher, but I think it's become a bit of a Bible in the last 5 years. It's kind of the must-have book. It's up on top of the Amazon poker charts, like a lot of the time. So if someone is a bit beyond that level and they're thinking, right, I can do this stuff, I understand the basics, I can handle things quite well, I don't make too many errors that I'm aware of, but I want to be more precise in some of my sizing, some of my betting, some et cetera, then there's things like, I mean, there are other books as well, but the Michael Acevedo one is the obvious one.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends, kind of where they're coming from. And we've started doing a couple of series now where we've got like 100 tips or 100 things to keep an eye on. And they're quite nice as well because, again, not too heavy, but you can like, each of them, you can learn something for sure that you maybe hadn't thought of. And maybe with 100 pieces of information, okay, maybe 20 or 30 you already know, or they're not that interesting, but there will be a sizable chunk of stuff in there that you'll think, oh, yes, I can introduce that into my game. Mm-hmm. So there's... different types and style of book, like I said before, but hopefully giving people of all different persuasions and different levels of ability and different what their plan is to try and move forward. There should be something for them.
Yeah.
One thing we have got on the site actually is quite interesting. There's a little flow chart that I did, and it's one of these things where it says, do you like playing cash or something? You go down this, and all our books are on there, so you can sort of. It should give a little bit of a sense of the flavour of each book, even if it's quite a gimmicky, basic thing. But that's a starting point.
Oh, that's great. We'll share that in the show notes here too, because I think that's probably a really helpful resource for people who might be looking for the perfect book for them. And you've touched on this a little as well, but I know some of our audience is really interested in sort of expanding their breadth beyond Hold'em. And I know you've done some mixed game books, and tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, obviously, I think Hold'em is probably still, I don't know the figures, but is it like 90% sort of what is played both online and in casinos and stuff? But obviously, mixed games are very interesting, and and when I was playing, I play very little poker these days, but I used to play a lot about 10, 12 years ago when it was kind of like a little bit easier to win money than it is now. Yeah. But when I got a bit bored with playing Hold'em all the time, I kind of got into mixed games, and I thought, this is really interesting. And so we did do one book on mixed games, and it's done quite well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that because
PLO is obviously the main other one as well, and we've done several books on PLO, and PLO is a great game. I've often dipped in myself, and I find it fascinating. But obviously, it requires different strategies to hold them, both structurally, obviously with the pot limit size, and also the way you use it. You know, it's much more blockers are much more important, stuff
Yeah.
like that. So that's like and I think it's a nice idea if you've been playing Hold'em for a long time and nothing else, just to take a breather and look at these other games, because they'll freshen up your Hold'em game, you know, for sure.
They'll teach you things about, like you just mentioned, they'll teach you things about the game that you didn't even think you really needed to focus on, like the blocker aspect in PLO. I think, you know, that stud tends to teach you about kind of nut value and some of the blocker aspects as well. So I think there's some really great aspects to those games that help your Hold'em game, even if you don't have a strong interest in getting that much better at them. What what's on the horizon for D&B? What's something that we should be looking forward to that's coming out soon?
Okay, well, we've got quite an exciting year coming up next year. Like I said, we tend to do like about 3 books a year. And we're always slightly fearful we're going to run out of books or run out of ideas, but it never seems to quite happen. We always seem to manage to like pull something together. The big one that we're waiting for is Michael Acevedo's doing a follow-up to Modern Poker Theory. It's going to be Modern Poker Theory, the workbook. And I would say it's about 60% done, something like that. So we are anticipating we'll have this out by WSOP next year. And this should be like a great. What it is, it's obviously Modern Poker Theory is a great book, and it's like the Encyclopedia Britannica or something. And but it's undeniably quite dry. I mean, it's just, you know, it's a technical, a piece of technical, a work of technical information. This is much more kind of like user friendly and how you apply GTO into your game, because you can't learn it. You know, nobody can absorb everything to do with GTO. So what Michael's doing is like breaking it down into nuggets, and you know, you need to know this and you need to know that, and this will help you. And then there's a big kind of section where he's just analyzing a lot of tournament hands based around GTO and how you would consider them whilst playing the hand in terms of GTO, but also when you want to come back to them afterwards and you want to analyze them in terms of GTO. It's a much more practically based guide. So that one we're really excited about, obviously, because Modern Poker Theory did so well. You know, we're obviously got high expectations for this book, so that's a good one. And we did a book with sort of the PLO guys. They have the PLO Mastermind site, and they've got this online school, and they did a book for us about 3-4 years ago, and that's done really well on PLO. And we're going to do another one with them next year. Cool. So that's another exciting one that we've got coming out. And we're also thinking about doing a book on poker maths, which is in the early days. I may actually write this myself because maths is kind of my thing. I was a maths student at university and stuff. So and there is already a book that does very well. Hardin, the guy called Hardin, I think, wrote this book. I've forgotten his name. But I've got an idea for a different approach to doing it. So if I've got time and I'm not too bogged down with other things, I may get on and do this, or we may commission somebody else to write it. I'm not quite sure. But we've got those. Those are our kind of 3 main projects that we're looking forward to being able to get out. And we've also got a book. We've done 3 books with Alex Fitzgerald, as you'll probably know, and he has coordinating with another author. They've written a kind of a book that we've called "Improve Your Poker Now," and it's again, you were saying like these guys who have maybe been playing for a while, know a few things, want to move on a bit. That would be a good book. You know, if your knowledge level is still fairly basic and you just want to push forward to like be a bit more competent in situations, rather than someone who's already competent and is looking for like the nitty gritty stuff. So yeah, and that one should be out this year because we've already got it in. So it should be out by the end of the year for sure. So that's what we've got kind of in the pot at the moment.
That sounds like a really exciting lineup. I know both Michael's book and several of Alex's books have been part of the RecPoker book study. And I know those have been really in-depth conversations. Our friend Rob Washam leads those conversations at RecPoker, and I know they dug really deep on the Michael Acevedo book. So
I'm sure
there's
plenty of deeping to be done.
I think he does most of them on kind of like they usually do like a 6-week kind of thing where they run through a book, maybe 6 to 8 weeks kind of thing where they run through a book. And that one I think took many more weeks. I can't remember exactly how many, but it's definitely, like you said, it is an essential book if you want to understand
I think
kind of
so.
like the foundations of where GTO is and what it is and how to apply it. And yeah, but it's a book that takes some dedication to get yourself into, and it sounds like that complimentary book will be a really nice piece to sort
Yeah,
of.
well, obviously we've got high hopes, and it's a lovely. I like the fact that you've got this lovely contrast with Alex Fitzgerald, who is also like a brilliant player and a brilliant
Yeah.
teacher, but he has a completely different. He tells you something and he says right, and then he tells you again, and then he tells you again, and he makes no excuses for it. He says, "Look, you have to understand this. Okay, I'm going to keep telling you."
Yeah. I really appreciate him as well. He's been a guest on the program a few times, and we're always excited when he's coming back. So
The great thing is that we've worked with all these different authors, and almost without exception, they're all just like lovely people. They're really easy to work with. They're just like they're friendly and they do good work and they work hard and it's just a real pleasure doing this. Like, well, 90% of the time.
Right. Well, so you mentioned that you don't get to play very often these days, but when you do play, um, how what lessons do you apply, or like what things have you taken away from all publishing all these books that you apply to your own game?
That's a really difficult question. That's a good question, actually. Yeah, because if I say nothing, it's not going to sound very good. One thing, one thing that I started putting into practice a few years ago that I thought made quite a considerable change to my game. I got more fearless about bluffing. I used to find it quite difficult to bluff. Whereas when I read some, worked on the John Little books and certainly the Michael Acevedo book and also Alex as well, just all these different types of, just putting yourself, I started putting myself more in the villain's shoes and thinking, what does their range look like? How much of their range can they defend? No, I've got to attack them here, even though my hand is, it's at best a weak semi bluff or something. And suddenly, once I sort of summoned up I don't know if courage is the right word. Once I summoned up the desire to do this, these people started not every time, but they started folding enough that this was profitable. So I think it was like getting over a side. I don't know if this is a common problem.
It is.
Oh, not a problem exactly, but I was very reluctant to learn. I remember a little funny story that I hardly ever played live, but I did play live once. And there was one hand where I thought, oh, okay, yeah, I know what I want to do here. I had a draw. I can't remember the details. I had a drawing hand. And I thought, right, I'm going to bet the flop and the turn. And if I miss, I'm going to bluff the river. So that's what I did. I put chips into middle, flop, turn, missed. I've got no hand at all. Right. I'm going to put some chips in. And I was almost like embarrassed to do this. I can't do this. I'm fibbing. I've got no hand. I'm pretending I've got a hand. But yeah, so getting over that, for me, that was a lot of the work I've done in the books, like where players try to explain how you understand the opponent's range, and when that range is weak, you have to attack it. That was quite a hurdle for me. And when I got over that, I felt more confident about playing more aggressively. We always hear that the better players play more aggressively, and I never quite understood what they were doing. And suddenly it sort of fell into place a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. I think that's something that a lot of players struggle with. In fact, I would credit Alex Fitzgerald for being early on in my sort of poker journey, kind of helping me understand that as well, because he talked about this idea. There's this like, does he call it the fallen hero, or just that reluctance to bluff is partially because people don't want to look stupid. They want to like be perceived by the people they're playing with as being a good poker player. And so when they throw out a couple of cards that's so like, how do you have that? When they get caught bluffing, that makes them feel like, oh, now people are going to think I'm the stupid one. And so that is the thing I think that holds people back from making some of those plays. So I really appreciate, because that was directly from, I forget which one, but it was one of Alex's D&B books where
it's probably exploitative live. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in exploitative plays in live poker. There's cram full of books. I remember I just had one other thing. I remember when I started looking at this stuff, and there was some theory. I can't remember where it came from. It's probably in many of the different books, that when you open and get 3-bet, you can have a small 4-betting range, which is something like ace 5 suited, ace 4 suited. It's got that kind of stuff in there. And that would like have never occurred because you've got the ace blocker and then you've got a little bit of a drawing hand anyway. And I remember the very first time I 4-bet someone with ace, I was like terrified and they folded. I couldn't believe it. I got someone to 3-bet fold without a hand. And I was like, I was like happy for the next 48 hours.
Yeah. It feels so good, right? Because, I mean, it's scary to get 4-bet. That's the thing is like, you're thinking this is scary to bluff with this, but like when you're 3-betting and maybe you're a little light and somebody 4-bets, you're like, well, they must have it. And so, that's a pretty good feeling when that happens. Do you so like, are your books enough, or do you make time to study elsewhere so that you understand, you mentioned wanting to make sure that your books are relevant. How do you keep up on poker trends or poker, theory or things? Is it mostly the ideas that come to you through pitches, or are you sort of actively in the space trying to like understand where things are headed?
It's a bit of both. I mean, like I said, often we will have players come to us with projects that they were either people we worked with before or they come completely fresh and they've got some idea that they want to produce. And sometimes these are varying quality. I have to be honest. Some of them are like laughably bad and some of them are just absolutely brilliant. I don't know if you remember, we got 2 books by Will Tipton. They're kind of like a little bit outdated now, but he was like anticipating GTO before it happened, but in a sort of heads up environment, and he'd written these 2 books. I couldn't believe it. It was like like almost like the best material I'd ever seen. It turned up like in an email. And other stuff is less good. But yeah, to return to the point you were making, obviously we work a lot with John Little, and John Little is that he's in the thick of it. So if I'm curious about something, I just have a chat with him, and because I don't follow poker like I'm not looking at all the tweets and all the blogs and everything. I mean, I'll dip in and out, especially when the WSOP's on, and I'll sort of keep an eye on stuff. But if I'm kind of thinking, if somebody sends a proposal for a book and it's based around a topic and I'm not sure, I'll just ask him, and he'll give me sensible advice. 100% of the time.
What are you looking for in like even down the road? Do you think that there are things that the poker world needs to explore more? Are there books that haven't been written yet?
Oh, that's a difficult one. Yeah, because if I knew what they were, I'd probably be trying to commission them.
Yeah, maybe I don't want to give away your trade secrets. So
no, I wouldn't in any way claim to be some kind of like fortune teller about what's going to happen. I mean, nobody. What they say in Hollywood, nobody knows anything. You might. Right. I mean, 2 or 3 times we've produced books, and I thought this is a great book. People are going to love this, and it's just like completely flopped. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen very often. But it just like sometimes they make a film and it's got all the big stars in it, great plot, and it's a dud. No one's interested, and it just happens sometimes. But if you it's a bit like poker. You've got to ride the variance. If you just keep trying to do the right things, okay, sometimes they won't work out, but you think of it, well, that's just variance. We'll keep trying to do the right things, and some of them will work, and they'll be very EV, and the ones that weren't such negative EV or barely breaking even, that's fine. We'll just take those in our stride. So yeah, it's quite difficult because I mean, I've been in publishing a long time. You'd think Byron, you should know what a good book looks like. Sometimes I just get it wrong.
Right. Well, Byron, this has been a really great conversation. We're going to shift into our Stake Study Stack segment in just a moment. But before we do, how, if people are interested in getting their hands on some D&B books or kind of maybe seeing that flowchart, what's the best way for them to sort of like find some of these resources or reach out or that kind of thing?
Well, obviously, what we'd like you to do is all go to our site and buy the books from our site so that, we get the bulk of the money from that. But obviously, in the real world, that's not going to happen. So, everyone knows where, you go to the major booksellers online to pick, I don't need to name them, like Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. I mean, everything we've got is there. Audible is obviously where, we do a lot of business on Audible. So, I think we've got something like 16, 17 of our books are on in audio format now. So if you are a fan of, podcasting and stuff like that, and you like Audible, use it, there's a ton of our stuff up there. So, that's a very good place to go. But everything you want is on our site if you want to get it from there, including all the videos and the packs and all that kind of other stuff that we do. And just the major retailers, we've got them pretty much covered. Certainly in the electronic, we're on Kobo and Nook as well as the Kindle. There's a few like outliers I know Kindle's got the bulk of the market, but there are some other players out there, and we're with them as well.
Great. All right. Well, here we go. We're going into our stake study stack, and I always like to stir the pot with this. So you're going to pick one name that you want to stake in a poker tournament, one name that you'd like to study with, and one name that you'd like to just take all their chips at the table. And I always like to make it hard on you, and I'm going to pick three names that you've already mentioned. They're going to be D&B authors Jonathan Little, Michael Acevedo, and Alex Fitzgerald.
Oh, okay. That's probably quite easy in that case. If it's somebody I am going to study with, it would have to be Michael Acevedo, because he's probably one of the most knowledgeable people in the world about how to play good, technically accurate poker. Inevitably, I mean, he gets hired by the top professionals who want to fine tune their game, and God knows how much he charges. He must charge them fortunes. But if the top professionals want to go to someone to he's obviously going to be the guy who knows. Has the most of that information at his fingertips and understands the exact correct ways to play. In terms of staking someone, what have I got to do? I've got him to study, so I need to
stake, study, stack. You're going to study with somebody else.
I've got to stake, and
you've got to stake, and you've got to stack somebody.
Either player could go into either category. Actually, I would probably back John Little, because I think John Little is a fantastic practical player. In all the work I've done with him and all the books he's written, he obviously plays at a very high level, but he's also played many of these kind of tournaments that his students and the people who read our books would play, and the 1K and 2K buy-ins at the WSOP, that kind of stuff. And he is really fine-tuned to the different player types, how you play against these different player types, what you do at different stages of the time. And he's really good on that. And I think in terms of bringing your kind of maximum EV to the table, I think he's hard to beat in terms of playing your A game consistently. Mm-hmm. I think he's probably hard to beat. And so Alex is obviously...
So poor Alex, you get to scoop all those Alex Fitzgerald chips into your stack.
I would, I'd have to do it that way around, I think.
Fair enough. Well, Byron, I really thank you for your time. This has been a really great conversation, and I encourage our listeners, if you're not familiar, I'm sure you are, but if you're not familiar with the D&B books, go check them out. They have some fantastic resources. They've really helped a lot of players I know, including myself, try to just get better and better at this game, which is so hard to sort of like get better at. So I appreciate all the work that you do, and appreciate your time talking to us today on the RecPoker podcast.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks very much. And please, we're always happy to have feedback on our books. If you've got ideas, get in touch, whatever. We very much want to be proactive in the poker world and receiving feedback and acting on that, and hopefully continuing to do good work moving forward. So thanks very much for having me on the show. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Byron. And we'll talk to you next time.
Okay.
All Cheerio. Right. Take care. Bye. All right. And we're back. What an interview. What a great interview. Actually, I can say rightfully that that was a great interview. John hasn't heard it yet, but it was a really fun conversation. We went down some rabbit holes. He's got, I think, a really interesting perspective on the poker world. I mean, he's seen it change and shift into this kind of solver era, and has really kept an eye on both the recreational play, like the different levels of different types of players and their different interests. And he's got to publish different books for all those kind of like, whether you're like want to just stick your head in and just like dig deep into like the nitty gritty versus just trying to dip your toe in the water. They've got kind of books for all those levels, and I think they've done a really great job. So I was really grateful for that conversation.
And would you say that D&B Publishing has kind of taken over the mantle from 2+2 Publishing for being the premier poker book publisher?
I think so. I mean, I think, if I think about like the book, and we talked about this in the interview. I mean, like the books that people turn to and mention to. I mean, certainly Michael Acevedo's book, which we spent, Rob Washam in the book study spent, I don't know how many weeks digging into that, but it's just become a seminal book on GTO. And one of the things that we found out in this interview that I thought was really great and interesting is that one of their next projects is a project with Michael Acevedo, which is a bit of a complement to that book, trying to really help people take that theory and bring it into practical application. So it's a part 2 to the book. They're building like a workbook that people can kind of work through their own hands and with kind of as a complement to the original modern poker theory. So, I mean, I think so. I think D&B has sort of become that place that you turn to and you trust. You trust that if they put out a book, it's got something to say. And there's some value in there somewhere. So yeah, it was a really great conversation. So with that, John, why don't we talk about some home game results? I know we've got a little bit of a backlog, so why don't we talk about some home game results?
Yeah, today is we are recording this on July 8th. Last week would have been July 1st when we did it, and we decided because it was July 1st and half of the crew is out at the World Series of Poker and it's summer and nice weather, we decided to just post a rerun last week. So we didn't have the event. So we have 2 full weeks of home game results. So don't worry, your mention on the podcast won't be missed. You're just gonna have to share it with 2 weeks worth of people now. Now then, KB won his first nightly victory for the year. Jamie Tape Malay got his or her first nightly victory for the year. E. Anderson 85 Eric Anderson got his 5th nightly victory for the year. Poker Geek MN John Somsky won a daily mixed event. Roadstar 30. Yeah, I got lucky on that. And what's interesting is on the 30th, I came close in the LPP event, and I'd forgotten I won the mixed event, so I thought I needed it in order to make the TOC. But anyway, Roadstar 33 got his 2nd international victory. Izuma got his or her 3rd international victory. A Really Mad Guy got his first LPP event for the year. And then we will move on to the next week. And for the No Limit Hold'em Championship Series, this is a series where we keep score and keep track of all of the games for the entire year, and your top 10 scores. Each game you earn points. Your top 10 scores for points count towards your overall score, and then the winner at the end wins the Player of the Year bronze pin. Evil Roy CA, David Westerveld, won his first No Limit Hold'em series. He also managed to take the lead in the Player of the Year points race, but he is less than a point ahead of Kelly S. 1962 20s, Kelly Stork. So it's a very close lead, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out and who's going to take
got many months to play out too. So that
exactly.
Yeah.
It could still be anybody's game. Then E. Anderson 85, Eric Anderson got his 6th nightly victory for the year. And Michael Babker got his 2nd nightly victory for the year. Izuma Spike, or used to be Spike, I think, got his or her 4th international victory for the year. Poker Loon 91 got his or her 2nd international victory for the year. And Apple of My Eye, Harold Berry, won the daily LPP event. So he can contact info@rec.poker for his free month at Learn Pro Poker. And that also goes for a really mad guy who the week before won the LPP event. They both can contact info@rec.poker for their free month at Learn Pro Poker.
I'm delighted for all the winners, and I'm delighted that in Jim's absence, we can still manage to dox somebody. So congratulations, John, on figuring that out as well.
Yes. Yeah, I should know better, but Jim's not here, so we're just kind of making it up as
we're just trying
along.
to fill in the gaps for the time being. So yeah, no, congrats to all the winners. This this Player of the Year series, it's no joke. It's hard to win those. It's really hard to get into those final spots. So keep it up. I'd love to see it. Well, so for those of you watching live, we're gonna kind of shift into a strategy episode really shortly. So just stick with us. But for those of you who are listening along with us, we've got our fingers crossed that when this comes out, our own RecPoker Jim is still plugging along in the main event. And until then, I think oh, right. Thank you for reminding me. I'm so messed up between which episode we're in. So, we should do our food bank drawing as well. So, for those of you in the chat, if you want to enter food bank into the raffle, food insecurity is a problem that impacts a lot of people in a lot of different communities. It might impact somebody that somebody you might not think. And one of the best things you can possibly do is Google or look up in your favorite search service, type in food banks near me. You can commit either some financial help, deliver a non-perishable food item, or just volunteer some time out of your schedule. All of those things can help benefit the community that you live in. So as a way of just kind of reminding you all of all that, we like to do our drawing, and instead of having people enter by type in contest, we have them type food bank into the chat. Just a way to kind of keep that and refresh that into people's minds. So if you type that into the chat right now, you'll be eligible for our weekly drawing, and we'll do our drawing very shortly. John, is there anything while I'm getting my dice ready that you'd like to share with the community?
Well, it should be, everyone should remember that starting on August 1st, we are going to go back to having nightly games every night. So we will be adding back in a Thursday, a Friday, and a Saturday night home game. So you'll have even more chances to win those pins or qualify for the Player of the Year race.
And that's we should add that's by popular demand. So first of all, you've asked for it, come play. And second of all, thank John, because he makes this happen. It is a lot of effort and work, and we're also grateful for it. So if you see John around, be sure to give him, as Jim likes to say, put a beer in his hand. All right, we've got a couple of names. We've got Jamel and Evil Roy. Those are the two names I see going 1-2. Do you see any others? No.
That's exactly what I see.
Okay. I'm gonna give everyone 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. And I'm not doing the Dice Cam because it's just too hard tonight. So you're gonna have to trust me. This is built on trust. I'm giving. We've got a third one, Joe Rafter. I'm gonna let it in. So I've got a 4-sider. If I rolled a 4, we're gonna donate $20 to the food bank. And otherwise, we'll go 1 through 3. 3 being Joe Rafter. And it's a 2, which means Evil Roy is our winner this week. So, Evil Roy, you can contact us at info@rec.poker. Is that right?
Yes, info@rec.poker.
Info@rec.poker to claim your prize. And if you are listening along and wondering how can I get win these wonderful prizes, which is often either a free month at RecPoker, and if you're a premium member, you get a free month at one of our learning partners. So that includes Solve for Why, that includes Learn Pro Poker, that includes Red Chip Poker, that includes Jaka Coaching, that includes lots of others that are really great that I'm going to miss, and that's why I shouldn't start naming them. But pokercoaching.com. So you can check them all out on our website. They're all really great. They're all really worthwhile. And so it's a really, it's a great prize. Those are some high ticket items on the monthly charge. So all you got to do to win is come to our live taping on the YouTube and type Food Bank into the chat, and you're eligible. And it's usually 10 or less people, so you got usually a 10% chance entering the drawing. So we want to get more people joining us live. We really think this is a great way. So come join us and win a prize. But with that, John, for those of you who are with us live, stick around. We're going to do a little bit of a strategy episode. But for now, I think I want to thank the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. Thank John Somsky. Thank all the folks at RecPoker and Running Aces, and thank you, the listener, because we couldn't do it without you. We value your contributions, and we just hope to see you next time.